And we're live. What's up, everybody? As I mentioned a few weeks ago, I am making an effort to do at least one live stream a week. Just got back to LA from a little trip in Israel, which was fucking amazing. Um, my heart is in between two places, like Tel Aviv's been my home for so long. I have such a good group of friends there. My family's there. Um, it's hard to leave. But my goal here in Venice, California is to build community of conscious leaders. So I'm already starting to feel connected to this place. I'm meeting so many awesome people. We're meeting on a weekly basis for different dinners, hikes, gatherings. Uh, yeah, this is the first I've experienced my heart being in two places. Well, actually, maybe I felt it right when I moved to Israel from New Jersey after high school. I did miss Jersey for a while, but you know, like Jersey compared to Tel Aviv, come on. Venice, though, Venice has a magic to it. For those who have been, it's right on the beach, kind of like Tel Aviv. There's an energy here. Very interesting contrast between like there's a large homeless population, but there's also very wealthy people. I'm actually making friends with both sides of the spectrum. The community we're building, the Grateful Drafts community, are primarily leadership types. So a lot of them are high net worth individuals. Um, but I also spent a fair bit of time talking to the homeless community, which they're a lot of fun. We have a good time. They started calling me the Hebrew monk because sometimes I go out early and jump in the ocean, and they think I'm crazy for doing so. I share with them that when you start your day with something difficult, the rest of the day is that much easier. Now, the days I wake up early and jump in the ocean are far and few between. It's not like I'm doing this daily. I'm no David Goggins or Jocko Willnick. I feel like they're leading in promoting that lifestyle. Wake up at 5 a.m., I'm not quite there. I'm not sure I'll ever be there, but it's definitely inspiring. Um, I see in the chat we got Garefoot. What's up, man? Good to see you. Sept Adam, good to see you too. Justin, good to see you as well. What a crew. Cool. I see we have some people joining. We're gonna flow with some stuff. Eventually we'll start letting people on. It'll be a call-in show. We are working on some discussions and debates, but as I mentioned, they're much harder to coordinate. So if we don't have a debate or discussion set up, then I will I'll just go live and talk and let people on. We have Evan. Evan, what's up? Evan asks, what are you hoping to accomplish here in LA? So I've spoken about Grateful Drafts quite a bit. It's a company community I'm building. I don't want to get too deep into it just because we have a lot of other stuff to talk about, but we're building a community of leaders who are dedicated to elevating themselves and those around them. That's in short. A leader could be anybody with influence. It could be an artist, entrepreneur, thought leader, scientist, anyone with influence. But we're really looking for leaders that understand that all the money in the world doesn't matter if you're not happy and healthy. In fact, true wealth comes from being happy and healthy. And LA has a lot of that profile is very prevalent in LA. So that's why we're spending a fair bit of time here, and our community's blowing up. It's going very well. We've actually never been so confident in what we're doing. So it seems like it was a very good decision to come here. We do have a good community in Tel Aviv as well that's still growing, but most of our efforts are in Venice. So if we talk about where our community is concentrated, it's Tel Aviv, New York, Miami, LA, and then sprinkled throughout the world. But those are the main concentrated places. So that's where we're putting our primary efforts to do weekly physical gatherings. It could be dinners, it could be morning meetups, hikes, retreats, and then virtual experiences, which we do occasionally. Yeah, World War II epic battles. Says you look tired, Adar. I just woke up not too long ago. I'm a little bit tired, but I think just the camera angle is really making the bags under my eyes just look a little larger than they are. Right when I do this, you can't see them. See, I don't look tired now. Might do this. I look tired. So it's just an angle thing more than anything. Starhopper, wow, good to see you. Hi, Adar. Venice, question mark, LOL figures. You know, Starhopper, you can't start with something just a little bit nicer. It's been so long since we've connected, and you got to start with that. You know, all good. I still accept you. It's good to see you here. Hold on, I'm getting some dings. I see people asking who's Adam Green. Yeah, I didn't know what to label this, so I'm like, yeah, what do we want to talk about? So we'll get there. Rafi Brown, hey Adar, it's Rafael for Passport Control. Saw you a month ago. Yeah, Rafael, what's up, brother? It was funny story. I was walking through the airport, and some guy's like, hey, are you Adar? And I guess that was you. So it always feels good to get stopped randomly, and somebody says they view the channel and they like it. So that always inspires me to do this. So thanks for approaching me, Rafi, and good to see you here. Fabian asked who is Adam Green. We'll get into that. So Startup, you're asking what wasn't nice about it. It's kind of like the Venice LOL figures. You know, it's like, you know, it's like passive aggressive kind of, but maybe I just didn't understand your tone given our history. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I agree. Venice does suit me. It does. I enjoyed here, but I do miss Tel Aviv and Israel in general greatly. Cool. So let's get started. Would I title this? Adam Green blocked me on Twitter, current events and more. Yeah. Okay. Let's start with. So those who don't know who Adam Green is, he's a raging anti-Semite. He claims he's not, you know, but he is. But I considered him a friend, not like a close buddy, but we would have conversations. You know, it was always civil. I have a debate with him on this channel, which is got quite a fair bit of views. People seem to like it. Hold on, let me just drop that. Let me drop that debate here if anybody wants to know. But it was interesting. And Adam, if you're watching this, you know, why'd you block me, bro? Like, what? Because I challenged something you put out? Like, are you that fragile? I guess I hit a soft spot. I called him Jewish, and I guess he's very, very sensitive to that. But I'll take you all through this story. But Adam, if you are watching this, I'm sorry if I offended you, and reach out to me. Let's get you on for a live stream where I'll come on your show and we could talk about it. We could talk about what happened. But I sometimes interact with people on Twitter. People are quick to block. Like, people are fucking sensitive. Like, yo, I'm not being a dick. Well, maybe there's a little edginess to what I'm doing, but it's not extreme. I'm not being mean to people. And then they just block. So people like to live comfortably in their echo chambers where they're not challenged, especially not by a Jew, you know. That's challenging. Okay, let me open Twitter, and I'm opening Twitter from the Grateful Giraffes account, where I'm not blocked, just so I could review what happened. It's pretty funny. I guess we could just go through Twitter in general. You know, Twitter is such an entertaining place that we can do live streams just going through Twitter and doing. Hold on, why am I still getting these beeps? The one thing I've had to change since coming to the US is I now use iMessage instead of WhatsApp. Yikes. It's okay, but WhatsApp's better, let's be real. Okay. Screen share. You're asking, do I like Twitter better under Elon? Okay, so yeah, that's actually a cool starting place. I've always had tremendous respect for Elon. I mean, his ability to manage multiple revolutionary, groundbreaking technological companies simultaneously and seemingly doing it well is not human, right? It's like, and I'm saying this as somebody who's building a company now, it takes all of your time. I don't even understand how he could possibly do that. And the fact how he's constantly thinking like 50 years ahead, like what, it's almost like he wakes up in the morning and says, what will people be working on in 50 years? I'm going to start that now. So I've had tremendous respect for him. But to be completely honest, him taking over Twitter has caused me to lose respect for him. It's not that I don't think he could improve Twitter. I think he has what it takes to improve it, specifically technologically speaking. I think he has a lot of ideas to just make it a better app. And I know he has some visions to making it more like WeChat, which is like China's app, which is not only messaging, it's also has everything built in. So there's like an Uber built in, Uber Eats built in, Airbnb built in. It's everything in one, payment system built in, right? So I think that's his vision, and I actually think he could do it. He definitely has the capabilities. The reason I've lost respect for him is because he's a genius in one area, but he's almost like emotionally immature. He often acts like a child. And I feel like the amount of power he has now, not over tech, but over the social sphere, right? The realm of dialogue, he needs to be acting a little bit more mature. And this we see in different forms, right? So just he'll sometimes like, he's more and more picking a side in certain culture wars, which these culture wars are mainly bullshit and just keep people distracted from real issues. So I would like to see him, instead of take a side in bullshit culture wars, to actually bring people's attention to real issues and real solutions for certain challenges. That's one. And here's the thing: powerful people often support one side of the culture war or another, because I actually think it's convenient, because people in power are powerful because of the existing system, and a lot of the big changes we make are systemic changes that might affect people in power. So it's very convenient for them to, like, that's why corporations go woke, right? It's not that corporations care about wokeness. They don't care about diversity. It's just, let people fight over diversity so we don't need to pay more taxes, right? That's why I think we see corporations go woke. At least one of the reasons. So that's one area where I think he's not acting, as mature as he could. And another is just his he was banning accounts of people for calling him out. Like, he goes from being a free speech absolutist to being quite authoritarian, which we've seen time and time again with like when a government has a coup, or when some new leader is even voted in on like some premise of liberty, and then they themselves become authoritarian. So some accounts got suspended just for calling him out. He went from free speech absolutism to kind of just ad hoc, just banning and not really knowing what he's doing. He's not taking a principled approach to the free speech policy, and it seems like he, in a certain sense, lacks integrity. So I lost respect for him as like an individual. But I still think he has the ability to make Twitter much, much better. I hope that answers your question. Anyways, let's screen share this. So Evan, I see you're asking for an example. I could find you one. There were a few accounts that actually got suspended for calling him out, and then a few days later he brought them out. He's acting very emotionally. There's a few instances of this. Another one is also he used as an example. He said, "I believe in free speech. I won't even ban the account that tracks my plane." And then a few weeks later, he banned that account. And he used an example. He's like, my family was endangered, but he didn't provide any real evidence that any of his family were endangered. And that account is actually just giving information that can be publicly found. So it's not like it's information that doesn't exist. So he banned that account, and then he banned accounts that were sharing the story about that, because he said that they're leading to the place where that real-time information can be found. He then also considered, or he started banning accounts that were posting links to other competing platforms. I think he rolled that one back. And then there's this one journalist, I need to recall her name, maybe somebody knows or someone can look it up, who called him out, got suspended, and then got brought back a few days later. Also, Kanye getting suspended, he says it was because of anti-Semitism, but if you look at Kanye's last tweet, it was making fun of him. I think he says it was like the swastika Jewish star symbol, which is honestly kind of funny. Like I understand it's offensive, but if you can't go from free speech absolutist and then saying that flag has crossed the line, you just can't. That's an inconsistent. It's inconsistent, especially when the swastika, as offensive as it is like an ancient Eastern symbol for thousands of years. So, you know, that's just off the cuff the things he's done, but I'm sure we could find a lot more. We're going through the tweets. So me and Blake Flayton actually had a little interaction about anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism. We ended it by saying, let's get on a live stream to talk. He said, let's do it. So Blake and I may have a one-on-one. Okay, we're going to get back to Nick Adams. Hold my thought there. We're going to get back to this guy. We got to talk about him. I don't know if I've ever come across a bigger loser, unless it's a parody account. I just can't figure it out. But I do want to go to the Adam Green interaction. Okay, Adam Green. Let's see. Okay, so this guy, Religion Watch, shared a video which Christianity started by double agents placed by Judaism, right? And then it's a compilation of a bunch of rabbis sharing their theory about how I don't know if you guys want to hear, we could play.
The manuscript circulated in secret among Jews. Toldot Yeshu presents the later history of the Christian religions, which of course happened because the Jews planted a sort of counter agent who was going to act as if he was a Christian, but he was going to convince the Christians to leave the Jewish religion.
Simon Peter. Peter, according to Judaism, is what? He's a secret agent of Judaism.
Shimon Kippur is none other than the man that is known in the Christian Bible as Simon Peter. So Shimon Kippur volunteered to do the equivalent of a suicide mission, a spiritual suicide mission. He basically said, I will create a church. I will create a new religion. I will, as it were, take Christians out of Judaism.
It's kind of interesting how they describe it, because they go, we're going to start a new religion by taking Christians out of Judaism. But for Christians to be within Judaism, Christianity must exist. So there's something weird about how that's described, but this is the gist of it. So then I replied, no more news, that's Adam Green. So you believe Jewish mythology? I guess they were right about you being Jewish. So here's really the thing. This is rabbis' take on Jewish mythology. Adam Green, he didn't share the original post, but he was tagged in it, and then he commented agreeing in it. So if he's actually taking rabbis and their word on Jewish mythology, well, who does that? Jews do that, right? Wait, hold on. Whoops. Jews do that. Jews listen to rabbis on Jewish mythology. And Adam Green's been accused of being a Jew in the past. I think partially because his last name is Green, but he's also not only anti-Jewish, he's an atheist, so a lot of Christian anti-Semites don't like him. So they've called him a Jew or a double agent. So I kind of just used that because I know it's, I thought it would be funny. I didn't think he'd be so deeply offended by it. So I accused him of being Jewish because he's literally agreeing with Jewish mythology. And then he responds, Christians believe J mythology, and rabbis think Christian mythology was created by their secret agents. We all see you're in denial coping. Right, that's just not even relevant to what I said. And then this guy who posted the video laughs. Hold on, where's my response to this? And then I go, if you think Christian mythology was created by secret agents, then you're believing Jewish mythology. Welcome to the tribe, brother. You know, I'm just having a goof. I'm having fun with the dude. Boom, blocked. Right on the spot, blocked. And then I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I continue my little chat with Religion Watch. And then his bio says not religious. So I go, wait, I just read your bio. Why are you promoting Jewish mythology if you're not religious? Where's the critical analysis? He goes, no one's promoting Jewish mythology. We're comparing teachings of religious and Christianity is obviously cucked on their parent source religion of Judaism. Were you aware that they believed your saints to be agents, or are you barely learning about this post? And then I go, that video doesn't compare teachings. It's a compilation of rabbis sharing certain aspects of Jewish mythology. The impression I got from you sharing it is that you believe it to be true. Is that not the case? And then he goes, wait, oh, I now see he responded, but then blocked me. Huh. Sure, we can set something up. My email is in my bio. Interesting. So now that I'm looking at it from the Grateful Drafts page, I see he replied, but then blocked me shortly after. His email is not in his bio. He's fucking lying. That's kind of weird. Okay, I can't reply to this from the Grateful Drafts page, but if anybody wants to go to this thread and ask him why he blocked me right after posting this, that'd be fun. But yeah, I guess the point I'm getting across is like the anti-Semites are so sensitive. Why? I'm just trying to talk. And then here's the thing. I've actually been trying to get another anti-Semite on the channel for a while now. Nobody is responding. Nobody. So if anybody wants to help, if anybody knows some like anti-Semites that want to chat, let's bring them on, you know, let's talk. Trying to have more of these conversations. Cool. That's the whole Adam Green thing. Again, Adam, if you're watching this, you know, let's figure this out. Didn't mean to offend you. I didn't think you'd take it so harshly. Anyways, I want to go. I want to look at something else. Actually, this is a guy I'd love to speak to. Anomaly. He's not a raging anti-Semite, but he in recent years has been hopping more and more on that bandwagon. So I'd love to speak to him. Rudy actually just spoke to him. So I'm waiting for Rudy to get back from Africa. He said he could connect us. So hopefully that comes through. Okay, this is actually an interesting concept I want to share with you all. So common woke catchphrases, which I love this idea. You all know that I've been pretty critical of wokeness throughout, you know, the years. And then people do some interesting ones. And she goes, here's my contribution, Queers for Palestine. So I actually responded to this and people got upset with me. But Queers for Palestine, I actually view that as like not a strong argument to put that down. It's true that being gay in Palestine, you might get killed, right? In Gaza, it looks like you're going to get killed. In the West Bank, you might just need to leave and live in Israel. That's for sure, right? So the whole thing is like, oh, it's so ironic. How could you be Queers for Palestine? Well, if you really think about it, you don't need to agree with everything a society believes in order to support their rights. So you could be gay or any form of LGBTQ and recognize that Palestinian culture is still regressive when it comes to gay rights, right? You could understand that gays you can't be gay in Palestine, but still want Palestinians to be free. Like you could support human rights without a precondition for them supporting you. So this whole thing, calling it ironic, it's not really true. Queers for Palestine is not inconsistent. It's actually legitimate. One's belief in human rights should not be dependent on if that population is progressive enough to accept you. If you're going at things in a way with integrity and without ego, you can accept that truth. So I've never found that to be a strong argument. Star Harper goes, they have no idea what they're supporting. So I would say that there's probably some truth to that a lot of queers for Palestine, like a lot of people in that movement, aren't aware of the situation. But if they're consistent in their belief that humans deserve certain basic rights, then it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. A society doesn't need to be progressive to deserve the privilege of freedom of movement and being able to self-determine on their land, right? So, it's really not a great argument. Schuperman goes, diversity is a distraction, red flag. Who said that? Schuperman, you always get offended when I say anything about wokeness or about how I don't agree with the social justice movement. But I'd actually love to have you on the channel to talk about this, because I actually I actually care a lot about social justice. I just think what's become mainstream social justice is not only not productive to the goals of social justice, it's counterproductive. It's counterproductive in building a strong, cohesive society where people love and respect one another. It does the opposite of that. So I have no issue at all with diversity. I think diversity is great. But I think the approach that many in the movement are taking is not going to get us to a more diverse place and a more unified place. It's just creating a greater division in American society. And again, you're welcome on the show at any time to have this conversation. Cool. What else? One more thing on Twitter. Okay. Have any of you all heard of this guy, Nick Adams? You need to help me understand if this is a parody or not, okay? First of all, anybody who puts alpha male in their profile, here's a good rule of thumb, right? If you put alpha male in your profile, you're most likely not alpha in any way. You're most likely insecure and you need to flaunt it. It's like, you're flexing, right? You're trying too hard. Real alphas don't need to try that hard. They just are. Okay, so huge red flag. But like, I don't know if this is like satire or if he's just part serious, part trolling. I think he's part serious, part trolling, but best-selling author endorsed by President Trump, president of Flag USA, presidential appointee, Australian by birth, American by choice. Seems legit, you know? Like, look at this. Alpha male New Year checklist, Bible in hand, Fortnite controller in trash, President Trump NFT on display, Nick Adams cameo booked. Kid Rock is an alpha male. I think anybody who's like conservative, he would view as alpha. And if you're liberal, then you're by default, liberal. Raise your musically inclined sons to be like Kid Rock, not Bruce Springsteen. You know, it's interesting. I'm pretty sure Kid Rock is an alcoholic and drug addict, or he used to be. So it's like, but he's a strong conservative. So you could look past all the other stuff. I actually grew up listening to Kid Rock. I used to like his music. The American people want Kid Rock for Super Bowl halftime show, not Rihanna. I don't know. You put a poll out there. I'm not sure you're going to get the results you're looking for, buddy. Nobody has ever wanted Joe Biden to sing happy birthday to them ever. I mean, I could agree with that. Well, there's probably some people, but he's not like, that wouldn't be many people's first choice. The left hates Donald Trump because he's a strong alpha male. They prefer soft, effeminate beta males like Barack Obama and Joe Biden, weak men who take instructions from their wives. Men who need their wives to open jars for them should be barred from running for president. So Floodland, you think it's surely a joke? I'm not sure. I think he just has like some kind of like deep like, what's the diagnosis? It's like, I don't want to say narcissism. There are a lot of narcissists. I think Trump is one. I think Andrew Tate's a narcissist. This guy just has like deep insecurity and is like, and bad social awareness. Maybe he's a narcissist, but that's not the vibe I pick up. I mean, let's break this one down. So Donald Trump, none of the criticism about him is about him being alpha, and it's not even clear what people mean by alpha, beta. And I've seen anthropologists or evolutionary biologists try to come out and debunking the whole alpha beta notion. That said, there are certain men that have like a stature and energy that is dominant, that women very much pick up on. So I think that's something you could call alpha. And that's something very hard to just become if you're not born that way. But we all have met those people. They're like generally over 6 foot tall. They have broad shoulders, a deeper voice. They're very confident in themselves. Like that's generally how people describe alpha. But like the criticism about Trump, there's two. It's either you don't like his policy, and I think his policy isn't nearly as bad as many made it out to be. It's certainly not one that I agree with much of it, but it wasn't like, it wasn't a straight up Nazi like it was claimed. And the other is just his temperament, his personality, which is one that no one should trust. Like anybody who has, right, you could agree with Trump's policy and still understand that he has deeply flawed character traits. Like I describe him as a narcissist. He is, whenever you meet somebody who constantly talks about themselves, elevates themselves, refuses to apologize, refuses to take accountability, has zero ability for self-reflection, that is somebody who is most likely a narcissist, who should not be in positions of power, and whose personality you shouldn't respect. And if you do, then I would personally question your social awareness, right? Like, and this is what the whole Andrew Tate thing, why it makes me sad, how popular he is. If you actually have a good understanding of people and characters, you could tell that Andrew Tate, he has those classic traits of a narcissist, and so does Trump. So, but Nick Adams loves him. He's an alpha. And put the narcissism aside, I don't even think Trump falls into that classical alpha that we described. Starhopper, are you asking me if I trust Biden? No, I didn't say that. I think after watching the first presidential debate, I said to myself, Biden clearly has dementia and there's no way he wins the primary. I was actually shocked that he won the primary and then the presidency. I didn't support, and even if he didn't have dementia, I don't support his politics. No, there's nothing about Biden that I like about him. And I think actually what they're doing is elder abuse. Being president is one of the most taxing positions in the world, emotionally and physically. The hours you need to work, the amount of travel you have, to put somebody in to put somebody in power who's struggling, who has dementia, who's that old, who's struggling that great. That's a form of elder abuse. It really is. And I know he has some agency, but there's a certain point where you start losing your mind. You also lose agency. Like that is a thing, right? You can't consent over once you're at a certain state of dementia. I think Biden is actually close to that state. So yeah, I definitely hope he doesn't run a second round. I think Democrats are actually going to struggle in the general. I don't know. We've seen the past few election cycles. It's so hard to predict, but it wouldn't surprise me if DeSantis just comes and sweeps it. But we'll talk about that at another time. Football fan says, didn't Andrew Tate steal from his fans? I don't know if stealing's the right word. I mean, he's just sold them a bullshit $50 a month course on how to Hustler University, which just teaches you stuff you could learn off the internet. And at very best, if you're doing this stuff, you can make a few $1,000s a month. It doesn't teach you how to get the Bugatti. And if you look at how he made money to get the Bugatti, it was through through a webcam business, which is a trash business, you know. Justin goes, Trump is more like a spoiled brat than a narcissist. I mean, you know, if you've met a narcissist, maybe a lot of people have one in their family. You could see he has those classic narcissist traits. And again, I'm not a psychologist, so this is just a very much, you know, my assessment. But at the very least, we could see he has the emotional maturity of a child, right? Which again, that's not somebody who you should have great respect for. Or at least not somebody I generally have great respect for. Nerofa goes, hey, Adar, F Kanye West, right? Oh yeah, I mean, he seems to be off the rocker, definitely causing a lot of harm. He's normalizing a lot of anti-Semitic ideas. He's also helped Nick Fuentes become more popular, who's a pretty trash human. I'd love to actually have Nick on the program at some point. Anyone want to reach out to Nick on behalf of Sulha? Go for it. Let's get him on. Floodland goes, the DNC wanted a zombie to program. Yeah, I think there's some truth to that, but I think we actually look at if we actually look at like the election cycle, we they were playing with different characters. Like the mainstream media, like would push out different candidates that were safe enough. Like they wouldn't push Bernie or Andrew Yang, no one who was like too different. But they played with a few to kind of see how people would respond, and just no one did well in polling. Like Kamala was one, Pete Buttigieg was another. Maybe Amy Klobuchar, did they try with her? Like they were trying a few different candidates to see if anyone would stick, because they saw the challenges with Biden. They saw he's struggling to stay awake and be coherent. But they didn't do well in polling, so they're like, okay, we're going to go with Biden. Let's do it. And it seemed to have worked. Cool. Yeah, so that's kind of that's a little Twitter rundown, current events. What's going on in the world? People keep asking me about the new government in Israel. I haven't had time to really do a deep dive in it, but I mean, the trajectory of the state is not going well, right? Although Starhopper, I'm sure you love what's going on, huh? This is the perfect government for you, huh? But yeah, from a few different angles. First of all, just the amount of control religious figures have over, you know, key positions in government is concerning. Israel is moving more from democracy to theocracy every day this government is alive. And the Palestinians are not going to get the better end of this deal by any means. What will be the result of that? Will it continue to fuel radicalization on the Palestinian side? That would probably be my guess. This kind of, you know, generally, the tougher your conditions are, the less amount of hope you have, the more despair you have. This tends to radicalize people, which is why I've always held that as hopeless as we could be about the conflict, and as much of the change needs to come from the Palestinian side, there's so much Israel could do to affect the environment in which Palestinians live in and are raised in. And to that extent, we need to do our best to improve their conditions, because you are a product of your environment, and we have a lot of control over what their environment looks like. Do I see this new government improving their environment? No. But I'm hopeful. And I'm also hopeful that the government won't last. You know, I think there's Bibi's being torn between his government and the international community, which, you know, is pulling him in the other direction. So, you know, we'll see what happens. I mean, if we're looking at like a 3-year average, it's just a matter of months before this government fails. And that's I think, the best case scenario. Democracy to theocracy, hyperbolic nonsense. I actually don't think that's hyperbolic. Every single law that's passed And maybe somebody who's better informed, who's done the research, can start pulling up things that are starting to change, or policies that are at least proposed to strengthen the religious nature of the state. Anything that strengthens the religious nature of the state moves it from democracy to theocracy, by definition. If you have a different interpretation of that, Starhopper, I'd be happy to hear. Thoughts about the BDS movement struggling in America? Are they struggling? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I could share why I don't like them. I think that I'm not against boycotting Israel, but I just don't think that it's done correctly. I think they've taken. So first of all, they have aspects of boycott that are, in my opinion, way too broad. So they want to boycott anything Israeli, and that gives the impression that you're against all of Israel, and many of them are, right? So that's kind of the thing. A lot of BDS, it's not that they want to end the occupation. It's not that they support a two-state solution. It's that they want to see the end of Israel, which is not the same of saying they want to see Jews murdered. I know many people jump to that conclusion, but I think that, so they're taking a very unrealistic goal and putting their efforts on something that's not realistic, rather than focus on something much more realistic. So imagine if they were to say, we don't boycott things that are Israeli. We boycott anything that comes from the West Bank, any Israeli product that comes from the West Bank. Then they're making a clear stance that we're not anti-Israel, we're anti-occupation. And I think they'd be much more effective in building a movement around that idea. Also, the idea of like a cultural boycott, boycotting artists, that's suspect in my opinion. I just don't think that's the right approach. Starhopper said, you missed what I said. All I said was any policy that brings Israel closer, that strengthens any policy that strengthens the religious nature of the state, right, moves it from democracy to theocracy. The definition of theocracy, and let's just give you word for word, right? System of government in which priests rule in the name of God or a god. Okay, so this is a Christian. Oh, wow, this is interesting. They use Israel as an example. The Commonwealth of Israel from the time of Moses until the election of Saul as king. That's interesting that's what they use. But I want to give a broader definition because we're not talking about priests, but religious figures, right? Let's talk about in the case of Israel. Religious figures are trying to implement policy which is in accordance to the Torah. Okay, that would be theocracy. Cool. Any I think that's all I have on my mind, all I want to say. I'm happy to drop a link, open it up to a little group discussion. Wait, let's see my schedule. I have a call. Damn, we don't have much time. Time flies when you're having fun. If anybody wants to hop on chat, just write something in chat and I'll drop a link. If not, I'll just take questions for the next 15 minutes when I need to sign off. If anybody does have questions or wants me to cover a topic, let me know. Also, super chat. Anybody want to super chat something? Oh yeah, Tal, of course. We already agreed that you would come on. Look, I don't take super chats, right? All the money the channel makes, I'm giving to. I'm trying to bring in more people to help manage the page. There's some that are already helping, so my idea is to give all the revenue that the channel makes to these people, so we can have more content. I actually haven't taken a salary for many months because I'm building a company, but we are fundraising this month. We're raising $350,000. The first 100K has already been committed by Mindful Capital, so it's going well. And once we get that, I'll start taking a salary again. So Sulha money will go back into the operation. Tal, I dropped the link. I'll send it to you on. I closed my WhatsApp, so snag the link from chat, Tal. And let's do this. We don't have much time, but would love to get you on for a little bit. So Starhopper goes, for whatever it's worth, I'm not pro theocracy. Good to know. Just think the left is losing their needlessly. Period. Is that a complete sentence? I'm not sure. Current government isn't going to turn Israel into theocracy. I could actually say that I agree that they're not going to go super theocracy. But if you look at the spectrum between democracy and theocracy, if this government succeeds in doing what they want, it will be closer to the side of theocracy by the time they're done. And I think I don't think many people would disagree with that. I think even people who support this government would agree with that, and they would support that. Tal.
Hello. It's been a while since I've been on Sulha.
Yeah, bro, you got to get some light on your face.
I know, right? I don't know. My computer is very weird. If I go to the other room to get a light, by the time I get it all set up. But you are right. I need a light.
Just so people know, Tal is an Ashkenazi Jew, in case anybody was wondering.
Yes.
Oh, Floodland, thanks for the $3. Floodland gives a super sticker, which is some kind of a bird of sorts, in between a bird and an egg, giving a thumbs up. That's a cute one. Anyways, thank you, Floodland. Tal, what's on your mind? We don't have much time, but the floor is yours. Talk to us, brother.
Yeah, so this is more something that I'm currently working on. It's something that we're going to be presenting on Sulha, I think in around a month. It really depends on, because I'm currently finishing up my degree, so very, very busy at the moment, also working. But I'm going to be giving either a presentation, like a live stream, or it's going to be like a commentary video on, essentially what I'm going to be talking about is terrorism and its relationship with the concept of innocence. So, what are you doing? It's fine, Mary. So, essentially, whenever we talk about terrorism as a concept, we're usually talking about who commits terrorism, as in we're trying to figure out who fits the label, or we're discussing like the origins of it, like what is terrorism, how does it come from? And so I was thinking about the definition of it, and now there is no consensus on the definition of terrorism, but with all definitions of modern terrorism, there's constantly the conversation about innocents, about civilians, about people who are non-combatants. And so I started thinking, who is a non-combatant? Who isn't justified? Because terrorism automatically has a negative connotation with it, that you're committing an act of violence to promote fear, and you're doing it against the civilian population or a non-combatant. And so the question that arises is, how do we define that? Like, who is a non-combatant? Like, what is the threshold? Because, for example, in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Palestinian militants and individuals who support them, they'll say that all Israelis are legitimate targets because we are all an extension of the Israeli government. And so that leaves no room for the term innocence. Or, for example, a soldier who is a part of the armed forces, but then on the weekend he goes out to a bar and he's not in uniform anymore. Is he still a legitimate target, even though at any time he can be called up to fight against me if I'm his enemy? And so this topic about how we define combatants and non-combatants has been in debate for thousands of years. In the actual conversation that I'm going to be having, I discuss historical examples from the Greeks to different examples from the Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and how they define non-combatants and people who should be spared during combat. And then all the way to international law and how international law defines non-combatants and individuals who we should not be harming during conflicts. And so It's actually very, very hard. Something that was actually just like a small thing from my research so far is the way that countries and organizations define terrorism is so different than one like each other. Like there are some countries that define terrorism as simply attacking non-combatants, as individuals who are not armed, and in other instances, terrorism can also be simply attacking electronic infrastructure. It can be attacking social workers. It can be attacking the government. Can also just be considered terrorism. And so a small thing to think about, this is something that I'll go into a little bit further in the actual live stream, is when you hear the word terrorism, when a country is using the word terrorism, what is their definition of terrorism? How are they defining that? Because there's no consensus on the word, not in international law and not among countries. For example, America has multiple different definitions. There's a definition by the CIA, by the FBI, by the US Code. In Israel, it constantly changes the definition of terrorism. There was just recently in 2016 an amendment and like a new law that was added which redefined terrorism. And so it gets very, very complicated. Then how are we supposed to be interacting with one another? For example, in my country, an attack that I do against the government won't be considered terrorism because it's seen as me fighting against the government officials, which aren't, according to my definition, they are combatants. But in another country, it is considered terrorism. So what happens? Like how are these countries then supposed to interact with one another? Also, for example, this is, as a political science student, something that was really interesting to learn was that terrorism is not considered something that a government can commit, only non-state actors. So that means that the United States, if the United States, Israel, the UK, Russia, China, if any of these countries commit an act that most of us would consider an act of terrorism, it isn't terrorism. It's simply considered a war crime. However, the only stipulation there is if, for example, as a government is directly funding a non-state actor that is defined as a terrorist. Also, the people who are labeled terrorists are usually, it's very, very fluid. For example, on the US terror watch list, people are taken off that list and on simply for political incentives, not always because they stopped committing acts of violence. Sometimes it can have to do with who is it being committed against. And so the main thing that I really want to understand is we all know about the term one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. And I wanted to understand why. Why does that exist? And to sum up the entire presentation, which I'm going to give, so you guys have like a spoiler, I guess, is terrorism is essentially an act that I deem as unjustified. That's all it means. In its modern context, and I'm going to be discussing how that context came to be, and then maybe how we evolved the term terrorism so it can't be used politically by different governments accordingly. Regarding specific things that I might have said that I should clarify, of course, certain things I'm going to have to, it's going to take, the entire live stream is going to be probably an hour, probably 45 minutes. I'll try to make it not that long. But if there's specific things that you'd like me to look at, things that you think I might miss when I'm doing my research, then please write it in the comments. And that's the few minutes.
Awesome, Tom.
So, yeah.
Super excited. Do we know when it's going to be at?
I'm probably, let me look at my schedule because I'm very busy. I currently work also as an investigative analyst at a research company. I'm also now a undergrad researcher at my university, and I'm finishing up my degree. So busy,
Busy man,
multiple
yeah.
fields. But I love doing this type of work, even this that has no connotation. Honestly, the week, the 12th to the 16th, probably like the 13th or 14th. Like
so February 12th,
we'll make
16th.
Yeah.
We'll schedule it ahead of time so y'all have enough time. Yeah, cool, Tom. Yeah. Thanks so much. We're excited for that. And everybody listening or watching, this is my dream for the channel, right? That it's not dependent on me coming on here to do content. I want this to be a platform where everybody can contribute. So just how Tal has an idea and is going to do this in-depth presentation on terrorism, I want to open this invite to anybody else who wants to come and talk about an issue. They could present the topic one-on-one. They could have a conversation with somebody. Really, the sky is the limit in terms of what we can do on this channel. I want to view it as an open platform for anyone to contribute. And when I say anybody, I mean anybody whose values align with the values of this channel, wanting to see this world become a better place, and wanting to reconcile between people in conflict. So reach out to me. You can find my information in the description. Let me know if you want to come on. Yeah, that's it. Maybe we have a few more minutes. I'll address just a few more things in the comments. So Isani, real quick, I have a few. Isani's saying, can a country have a mix of theocracy and democracy? Yeah, I mean, no government is like pure anything. You know, even the balance between like capitalism and socialism, there's a sliding scale. That for sure it could be a balance, but in my opinion, it should be as little theocracy as possible. More than 50% of Israel's population don't believe the Torah is the word of God. Why should they be ruled by the Torah in any way, shape, or form? You know, I really do like the American value of separation of church and state. Israel doesn't have such a clear separation, unfortunately. I wish it did. And look, if you give a lot of freedom to citizens, it allows for religious people to express their religion freely, and it allows secular people to express themselves freely. The second it becomes theocratic, it takes away that freedom from one group. So the more liberty the people have in general, it's good for 100% of the population. If it slides to the side of theocracy, there's a significant amount of people in the country who lose certain liberties. So that's really how I look at it. More freedom for the people, no matter what religion they are, whether they're Israeli, Palestinian, you know, that's generally how I like to look at things.
One last thing, Adar, if a comment.
Yeah.
Justin, who said it? Gerfoot said it. Maybe a comparison between the category of terrorism as it is used in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and other conflicts. So, in general, whenever you discuss the topic of terrorism, in most contexts, it's usually used in a very either Western-centric mindset. For example, when I was doing research for this talk, I was watching a lot of videos of international law by different lawyers, and the only examples they ever gave of terrorism was Middle East, like by Muslims or stuff like that, and they never talked about terrorism by other groups. Once in a while, they would mention the IRA. So that's one issue that happens when you talk about terrorism, and another issue is that terrorism is a very, very emotional topic because a lot of people have been affected by it, especially people living in Israel and Palestine. And so my issue with talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is I don't want it to detract from the discussion on the topic of terrorism. And so I'm either going to be separating it from the general topic. It'll be first we're talking about the concept of terrorism and innocence, and then we're going to use a case study, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and then we'll have questions, or we're simply going to completely avoid the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That really depends on my own research and as I'm building the script and discussing it with people that are close to me on the best way to do this. So people are able to learn from this and not immediately jump to certain conclusions. Just to give you an idea, when I was making the title card, it took me about 20 minutes to make it because I wanted to make sure that I'm being fair on both sides in any comparison of who do we define as a terrorist, who do we define as a soldier and a civilian and everything. And every single slide I'm trying to take into consideration every single, for example, when I look at definitions by countries, I give 4 countries or organizations that are considered the West, and 4 examples that are considered the East. And so constantly throughout the presentation and the script, it's about making sure that everyone is represented fairly to ensure that people are focused on the message being said and not on where is his bias coming out. And so that's an issue that arises with that.
Cool. Can we do one more? Maybe. So Isani responds, but then again, theocracy, for people who adhere to that theocracy, not all. And Judaism is way more exclusive in that context. Yeah, but that's not really the case. Like even prior to this government, Israel has certain aspects of the government that are theocratic that should change. For example, if you want to get married, you need to do it through the Rabbanut, is what it's called, which is like how would you describe the Rabbanut? It's kind of like the rabbinical political class. It's the Rabbanut is like a religious organization that has some control over aspects of the government, right? So you actually need to get married in Israel. It needs to be religious, right? It needs to be through a specific in a Jewish way, unless you're Muslim. But if you're
it's an extension of the Ottoman Empire, because in the Ottoman Empire, the courts were by the religious. So Israel just took that law. So if you're Jewish, you have to go into the Jewish courts. If you're Muslim, you have to go by Islamic courts and so forth. So it comes from there.
They extended it, right? But so that's clearly something that all secular Jews, right? That's just not for them. Then there's another one in for example, public transport on Shabbat, right, on the Sabbath. This is something that the localities don't have a say over, right? Tel Aviv, if you speak to the majority of people in Tel Aviv, they'd want public transport on Shabbat, right? The people have spoken. They want public transport in certain cities. Nope, can't have it, right? So that's an example of theocracy making rules that against the will of the people. Right, and I'm by no means an expert on this. We could bring somebody on, or I could do a little bit more research. But there's a lot of laws like this where the Rabbanut has control over what people do, and it's against the will of many people. So it just shouldn't be law. And it seems like it's going to get worse if this government doesn't collapse very soon. No, but what Tal said doesn't contradict the fact that there's what Tal said, if you're Jewish, you need to go to a Jewish court. If you're Muslim, you go to a Muslim court. That's fine. But half of the Jews in Israel are secular. So why should they need to go to a religious court? You know, that's just not that's undemocratic. If people are interested in this topic of theocracy versus democracy and Israel's mild theocratic nature, we could definitely focus on it more. But by default, if people need to adhere to certain religious belief, you're going to infringe on the liberties of people who don't believe in that religion. And I'm open to somebody making the case that you can have that without that being the case, but it doesn't seem possible. There's one thing I actually one last thing. Football fan goes, Adar, did you see that descendants of Hebron Jews will get their homes back? I actually did not see that. And I'm actually interested what that looks like, because descendants, first of all, I'm a descendant of Hebron Jews. My great-grandfather, 10 generations ago, Moshe Meislish, which is actually very famous in the Chabad world. He was a famous spy on Napoleon. I'll tell that story at a later date. But he moved from Vilna, Lithuania to Tzvat in 1812. And Tzvat the Safed, for those wondering. And then in 1814 moved to Hebron to build the Jewish community there. And my family lived there until the massacre. So, but I have like 30 cousins. Do we all get homes? Do we need to share a home? Like, what does that look like? If I get a home in Hebron, I am turning that into the house of peace. We're going to be doing coexistence stuff every day. The neighbors on both sides might hate me, but if I get a home in Hebron, I'm going to make good use of that and do some interfaith gatherings there on the daily. Mark my words. But hard to believe that every single descendant is going to get a home, because that seems like it's tens of thousands of people at this point. Maybe not tens of, yeah. If you do the math, it seems like it's probably tens of thousands. So I'm interested in what that looks like, but I'll look more into it. And we'll end it with this. Isani goes, Adar, you're such an amazing disappointment for your family. Yeah. No, so look, I have a very religious family. A lot of them are settlers. They definitely don't agree with me, but they at least find me interesting. So, and we love each other nonetheless. Anyways, Tal, anything you want to wrap it up with? You could have the final word here.
First, it's better now with the light, right?
Much better, yeah.
Okay, good. So that's that. Adar and I we'll make the schedule for I'm probably gonna do a live stream in the end. And I look forward to all of you being there.
Awesome. Thank you all. We'll try to be on next week with another live stream. Until then, much love.